What's up, guys? It's Talon. So today we're going to be talking about how the meta has changed with jungle. I'm going to give you guys some of the best champions on the patch, some champs that really got nerfed, types of champions that got nerfed, types of champions that got buffed with the new jungle changes. If you don't know what the jungle changes are, basically you have a slower clear speed and you get less gold throughout the mid game. So early game, it doesn't change too much. You're going to have a little bit slower clear speed, but overall relatively similar. And then in the mid game, past 5 minutes, the clear will be slower, and then 7:30 the gold that you get will be less as well from jungle camps, and so overall junglers will be nerfed pretty hard, but it's still overall a strong role. It's not like it's a weak role now. It's still going to be a very good role for carrying. And then going into kind of the specific champions and champion types that got a lot stronger. So Amumu is going to be the best jungler in the game now. Other carry junglers that were really farm reliant, like Zed, like Echo, those champions got a bit weaker. While Amumu just stayed really strong. He has really good clear speed. He doesn't rely on having a lot of gold, and yet he still can farm well and do really well with gold, so he can farm well if he needs to, but he has really good ganking, especially on level 5, and still play around his team, and is just overall very versatile, which makes him very strong. And with these changes, again, junglers are kind of needing to be a bit more versatile. They can't just sit and power farm every game to 3 items and hope that they win. They actually have to choose to gank more often, but still manage their farm at the same time, which is why a champion like Amumu is really good. Vi, for a similar reason, is really good. She's really good at ganking on level 5. She can set up her laners really well. She doesn't have to have a bunch of farm to be good because her ultimate's always going to be useful in team fights. But she's still really strong as a kind of farming champion if you need to. So you still can farm a lot and get really fed in games that you need to do so. And you're going to be definitely in a good spot there still. Lee Sin and Viego are kind of the assassin-y champions that are really good this patch. Obviously, they're both kind of bruisers, but they're a lot more burst damage assassin-focused champions. They're really good because they like to fight a lot early. Champions that like to fight a lot early are going to be a bit more strong because before, you farm, you focus on the farm. But now with the farm being a little bit less valuable, being able to fight more frequently is going to be a bit better. Now, I'm not telling you guys to fight 24/7 as a jungler. The changes don't overreact to them, but they are, to an extent, going to make these champions stronger. Viego has really good skirmishing power, and obviously, you get one reset and all of a sudden you carry a fight. Lee Sin, his ganking is really good, and he's able to definitely outfight a lot of junglers in the mid to late game, or the early to mid game rather, which makes him really strong. So just overall kind of fast-paced junglers who can, again, be very versatile. Those are going to be a lot of the stronger champions. Champions like Nyla got a lot weaker. The reason that something like Nyla got really weak is because she's a champion that pretty heavily relied on getting 3 items. Similarly, something like Kale, those champions that just can't do much early and are just really only useful in the late game, they just are going to get to their power spikes later, which obviously is going to make them overall weaker. Now, you can still play these champions. I would just recommend playing them in really good scenarios for them. So, for example, Nyla jungle, probably going to be a good thing to pick if the enemy pick a lot of auto attackers. If you have a Lulu or Amelia or something on your team, maybe a Yumi, and your team comp has some good early game that can get you through the early game. So maybe you have a Renekton or a Draven or that type of thing in your lanes, then you can pick this for some surefire scaling, but you're not going to get to those item spikes as quick as before. Same with something like Kale, as we said. But yeah, scaling junglers in general a bit weaker, but again, don't overreact too much. It's nothing crazy. You can still play these champions for sure. And then tanks with slower clears are still not going to be good. So tanks who have fast clears, like a Vi, if you build, tankier, or a Amumu, those are going to be really good champions right now. But a champion like Maokai that has a pretty slow clear speed is kind of still going to struggle. And the main reason for that is because he's still going to be outpaced really hard, and his clear speed is going to be even slower with these changes, and so he's just overall going to be kind of weak. Similarly, any champion that already has a really big weakness of clear is going to get weaker. But these champions already were barely played. Champions like Maokai were barely played. Champions like Camille with really slow clears, because clearing has always been, a very valuable thing. You've always needed to clear pretty quickly in order to be a real jungler. So I would say, in the future, hopefully Riot Games kind of buffs some of these champions' clear speeds. And the clear nerf isn't as big as people act like too. Like 20% lower damage on camps in the mid game is going to be noticeable, but it's not going to, it's going to shave off a few seconds of clearing a camp. It's not going to be like you're going to be 10 minutes late to a fight. But it is definitely a nerf overall. So those are a lot of the biggest general things if you guys are looking for some really good picks to play on this patch, I would also say Ambessa is going to be really good right now for a similar reason to champions like Vi being good, because she's really good throughout the game. She doesn't really have a lot of weak points. She's kind of just strong at all points in the game. Her clear speed's decent, and she's just overall able to play most situations well. She's a really good skirmishing and fighting champion. Similarly, something like Hecarim I also think is really good right now. I think Hecarim's going to be really good because of the fact that he is, again, good throughout the game, good at fighting, good at skirmishing, and yet he can still farm. Because the thing is, a lot of people are going to over-force ganks now and are going to really like under-rely on farming, but you need to understand that pretty much all of the macro tips I've ever given you guys on junglers are still applicable. You just have to be able to make a bit better decision-making in certain scenarios. So now it might be a bit more valuable sometimes if you see a really big stacked wave to actually go and dive that wave instead of going and farming, let's say, your topside camps, if your topside camps were up. But the wave that you saw that was really big was bot lane. Or like maybe every once in a while you might want to counter gank when you're tracking an enemy jungle and you know where they are. You might want to skip a camp or two more quickly to counter gank, and you might be a bit more okay with taking these risks because you're not going to fall as far behind now, and you're not going to get, you know, absolutely out farmed so hard. So that's a bit how jungle's changed as well. It's nothing crazy again, but that is going to be the case to an extent. And so that's just something to keep in mind as well when it comes to kind of the difference in the jungle meta and everything like that. It's just like the actual way that you're playing the game. Yeah, what else is there? I'm trying to think of what other champs. I mean, obviously, as we said, right, Amumu, Vi, probably going to be the overall best junglers. The only problem with Vi is Veil kind of makes it sometimes hard. QSS, Cleanse, all these things make it a little hard for ult to land. And so that's why a champion like Jarvan as well is pretty solid. So if you're looking for a different champion, you could play Jarvan. I actually think like something like Olaf is going to be pretty good because he's just pretty good in skirmishes. And again, a lot of his kind of like gold comes from fights. So like champions that are a bit more kill focused are going to be a bit stronger as well. But even something like Riven is not bad, especially if the enemy picks squishy comps, whereas champions like Shyvana are going to be kind of weak. And then another champion that's actually going to be really strong is going to be Volibear. He got a buff recently. He's really obviously always going to force a gank on level 5, basically. He's just consistently strong as well. He does fall off a bit harder than the average champion, but if you're building a Heartsteel on him, second item, you can still scale up quite nicely and still be a front line. So you can kind of see, you know, the pattern here is like if your champion's good on level 5 with good ganking, good gank setup, all those types of things, you're probably going to be pretty strong. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to talk about with this video. If you guys have questions about how specific junglers are impacted, just let me know in the comments. I just wanted to, you know, give you guys a bit of an overview of how the jungle meta has changed, and just I hope you guys can keep in mind that like the meta has not changed as drastically as some people might act like. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.